Good afternoon and welcome to United TV. My name is Kemal Erkan and today is October 17th, 2025, another Friday session. And our legal correspondent, Jessica Needle, is going to be with us and she's in the studio. We have new lighting and all that. You look much better now. So Jessica, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well, and I like the new setup.
It's going to get better, so we are investing a little bit more. So we have a lot of things to cover today, so I'm going to go ahead and start with our first topic. And this is one of the issues that we kind of hear more and more in different parts of the United States is the White House sending troops to the certain cities, the federal government pretty much deploying these. And this has some legal implications. And we wanted to kind of get into this and see if the National Guard is able to do it. Is it what else can we expect from this, and all those things that we want to kind of cover this with you. And if you can actually start from the constitutional side and tell us what are the constitutional limits on the president's authority to deploy um, domestically, deploy troops domestically without the state consent.
Yeah, that's a very broad and big question, and I don't want to get too much into a history lesson, but with all of the news about the National Guard being deployed to certain cities, we keep hearing the term the Passe Comitatus Act. I'm not sure if that's come up in any of your research or watching the news or anything. And generally speaking, it's just one sentence, and it's 150 years or so ago, which always makes it a little bit difficult. But we're trying to go back in time and trying to interpret what was meant when these things were crafted by people who are no longer around to clarify them. But the gist of it is saying that federal troops can't participate in civilian law enforcement unless they're somehow authorized by law. And the idea behind that is that we don't want the military on American soil enforcing laws. And I think that's something that's followed through and has become sort of part of the fabric of this country, is that that's something I think a lot of people they are uncomfortable with the idea of the military being around and the military actually acting against American citizens on American soil. We have millions of civilian officers in this country, police officers on the state and federal level. And generally speaking, the idea is that those people are trained to protect and to serve. They're trained, they understand like the local laws, they understand when you're allowed to detain somebody. They have all this training and knowledge that the military doesn't, because the military serves a different function. And because of that, generally speaking, presidents are hesitant to federalize the National Guard and to send the National Guard to these cities in order to, and even I'm going to say, I want to be clear that when the National Guard is sent to these cities, the idea isn't necessarily that they're going to be like arresting people, detaining people, or doing anything like that. They're there to assist and protect the civilian law enforcement, to kind of bulk them up.
So, question that comes to my mind when you know every time something out of ordinary happens, I always want to go to the root cause analysis to see why we got to that level, what brought us to that. Like, why don't we, for example, have that same issue in Wilmington? So, but this is in Los Angeles, this is in Chicago, and lately I think it's Portland. Is
Yes. Right now, there's been a district judge who has blocked that, so there is not National Guard in Portland, Oregon yet. But it's gone up to the highest, or not the highest, the next highest court, and it's an open-ended question, but it's looking like, based on the clips that I've seen with the circuit court judges, that
Mhm.
they're probably going to allow the National Guard into Portland shortly.
So, like when I'm asking these questions, of course, I'm asking without fully understanding the legal part of this. But then I know you are gonna give your opinion from the legal side, not necessarily an opinion of you personally, but from the legal side. If you see any issues with this, like there must be something that's making this our topic today, is because if this happens too often, or if it happens without the state consent, then things can get rocky in a way. So, because we are a federal system here, and there are certain boundaries between the state and the federal government. So, I think that's one of the reasons that people maybe are worried about it. If I don't know if you agree with this. And that's I want to kind of hear from that side, that do we see that this is going to become like a system issue at some point if this happens very too often?
Right. Well, you hit the nail on the head when you were talking about the issues between the federal government and the state government, because the idea is that there's supposed to be something of a separation there. There's state sovereignty. The states have the right to kind of, in a way, rule themselves separate from the federal government. Now, there is United States code that, I mean, it's on the books. We know when and how the National Guard is allowed to be federalized. The first, it's kind of like a checklist. It's either this, or this has happened. So the first is if the country or any of the states or the commonwealths have been invaded by a foreign nation.
Hmm.
Well, obviously that hasn't happened here. If there's a rebellion or a danger of rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States,
Hmm.
that I think is more what the White House is trying to lean on. Um, and then the third one is if the president is unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States, then the president can call in federal service members, um, and the orders for this purpose shall be issued through the governors of the state. So that's what it says, and I'm paraphrasing here. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but the gist of it is if there's something that's happening that is so dangerous that local law enforcement can't handle it, then the president can federalize the National Guard, but typically that's done with the governor's permission. The governor, and a lot of times the governor might request it.
Right.
Um, you know, in 1992, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because now we're talking about the Insurrection Act.
Hmm.
So let me pause and ask if you have any follow-up questions to what I just said.
Well, I'll have some follow-up questions, but I think you want to kind of explain the insurrection law and how that actually applies to this. And when was this happened the last time, I guess?
Okay, so we first were talking about the Posse Comitatus Act, and that is what is just generally saying, hey, we're not going to federalize troops. We're not going to have the military on American soil trying to maintain order against American citizens.
Hmm.
That's not what we do here. We have the local law enforcement that is supposed to take care of that. And one of the arguments in LA is Gavin Newsom, the governor there, is saying, well, the local law enforcement is taking care of it. You can see it. You watch the news. The protests so far have been generally peaceful, and when they have gotten a little bit out of control, out of hand, local law enforcement has been able to step in, and they've got tear gas, and they've got methods, and they've got pellet bullets in ways that they are able to stop things and calm them down before they get out of hand. Now, there is the Insurrection Act. That is a law that grants the president authority to deploy U.S. military domestically and use it against Americans, but under very certain conditions.
Hmm.
And it's something that President Trump keeps bringing up, and I don't want to say threatening to use, but keeps suggesting that it's going to be his next step, because Well, first of all, in D.C., Washington, D.C. is sort of its own thing because it doesn't belong to any state.
Right.
So the president was able to deploy the National Guard in D.C.
Without an
without
issue.
needing to go through the governors.
Right.
Now, in Chicago, in Illinois, and in LA, in California, uh, there were lawsuits filed in the federal court system saying, hey, we don't want you here. We don't need you here. There's an act in place that says you're not allowed to do this. And the district judges so far have been sort of siding with the governors where they're like, look, things aren't out of hand enough yet. It needs to get to a point where local law enforcement can't handle it before we're going to move forward and let the National Guard come in.
Hmm.
So that's the argument that the governors are making. Now, the Insurrection Act is something that says even if the governors don't want the troops to be
Hmm.
federalized, the president still could theoretically do it, essentially if things got so bad that he has no other choice. And the last time that's happened was in 1992 with the Rodney King riots in LA. So Rodney King was a black man who was pulled over. He was beaten by 4 white police officers very badly on camera, and it. I guess we didn't say went viral in 1992, but it essentially went
Well,
viral. Everyone was watching
it was
this.
on TV all over the
Yes, it was
place.
running
Yeah.
all over the news.
Hmm.
And at that point, racial relations were already fraught in LA.
Hmm.
There was a lot of animosity between the Korean Americans, the Korean community, and the black community. There was a lot of concern about violence that might erupt because of this
Hmm.
event. So the
Right.
4 police officers went on trial. They were going to be charged with excessive force, I think. And uh, the mayor, in preparation for this, actually reached out
Hmm.
to it was George H.W. Bush at the time and was like, "Look, I'm worried that if these police officers get get off, something bad is going to happen." So everybody was kind of poised for things to go wrong. Well, the police officers were found not guilty. The riots commenced. And then that's when the Insurrection Act was invoked. But the difference there was that California, LA, they were asking for help. Like, can we please, we need help at this point. And if you watch footage
Hmm.
from that time, I mean, it looked like all of LA was on fire. There was
Right.
$1 billion of damage. Dozens of people died. Thousands more were injured. Thousands more were arrested. It, it looks a lot different than what we're seeing right now in, say, Portland.
So this is kind of like from my political view perspective. Uh, a lot of things that we see is politically motivated, and I know you, especially from your side, you try to keep that separated from our topics, and I appreciate that. The I'm the one who actually always say what I need to say, and then I need good lawyers to defend me, I guess. So the issue always is politically motivated. So whoever is in power, they go out of their way. Sometimes they use it properly, sometimes they don't. But I see this in other countries as well. And whoever is in charge doesn't matter if it's this party or that. Once you are in charge, like you know, in during the Biden administration, we saw the riot in Trump's household. This happened, so that was kind of motivated
Do you mean,
politically.
are you talking about January 6th?
No, the in his house, the FBI went through his house,
Oh, okay.
right? So that was politically motivated. So, and I can kind of see on this that's also, Trump has, he has this style that tries to make, if he doesn't like you, he's trying to make you look really bad. So that's why I always process this very carefully to make sure that this is not some politically um, motivated act. And that's definitely, there is some part of that. What's the percentage of that? I don't know. But probably more than 50. But the other side, now when we look at as like I'm an employer in the city of Wilmington, and I want to make sure that my employees, when they are at their lunch break, they can walk around the city. If this is definitely not going to be happening because city is not taking and the state is not taking uh, proper actions to make the place safe, then you would think that uh, federal government would get into the state's business because there's that necessity at that point that it has to. So on this one, I'm not sure where I am yet. Maybe we need a little bit more time to see. But I think one of the problems that we see is if this is going to become the precedent for the future, if we can maybe talk about that a little bit. Do you think this is going to be a future issue if this is happening the way it is right now?
Um, right. So I want to respond to this. I I definitely appreciate your concern for your employees, um, but it does frighten me that this could become a precedent, and it does appear to be politically motivated. Just looking at the information that we have, I mean, according to the DOJ's own website, crime is statistically down. Crime in DC is down something like 25% from where it was last year, and still the National Guard was deployed in Washington, D.C. And I mean, every big city is always going to have crime. There's going to be violent crime. There's going to be petty crime. Just the idea that anytime a president doesn't think that the local police are able to handle something efficiently on their own, the idea that the federal government can swoop in and take over,
Hmm.
that I find a little unnerving, particularly when we have Portland, Chicago, and LA, where you have the leaders there, the governors, the mayors, specifically saying, no, we don't want you here. We don't need you here. We can handle it yourself. And when you look at the crime rate statistically, it does not seem like there is any kind of influx of crime in those places that necessitates the
Hmm.
sending of the National Guard. I mean, there are plenty of red states and red cities that have crime, and it does not look like the White House is interested in sending guards there. So, yes, I am concerned about making this a precedent. I do think that state sovereignty is really crucial and important, and that when you are in a state where you have elected a governor, you have this elected official, that governor is, in theory, hopefully working to do what's best for his city, for his state, or her city state, but also the will of the people. So it does make me nervous that this is
And I
happening.
think the key point here is there's no consent from the state government. So that's otherwise, if they were working together, that's one thing because they both agree, and then there's a disagreement. And when you are, let's say, Gavin Newsom, the fourth or fifth biggest economy in the world, California itself, it's one of the biggest. Like, it's more powerful than and bigger. Economy is bigger than most European countries that we know of. And when he's not able to do what he needs to do, and then gets the federal government getting into his way, I can see that's becoming a bigger problem. This doesn't mean that I'm actually supporting either side. Just looking at it from the objective point that I wouldn't want to be in his position. And if I was in Trump's position, I probably wouldn't want to waste my time with these. But for politicians, PR is a good thing. So they want to be, they want these things to be talked about, and now we are talking about it. So
But I also think if we look at why the National Guard is being deployed, it does seem to be because there are protests happening
hmm
at these ICE facilities. It
hmm
doesn't, I mean, to your point, you were talking about you want your employees to feel safe walking to their cars after work. You don't want them to get mugged, attacked, or,
hmm
you I work in the city too. Like you see people doing drugs on the street and there's unhoused people, but that doesn't seem to be the motivation here. It appears to be stopping these protests. And I mean, protest is that's sort of the it's quintessentially American. It's the very first amendment in the Bill of Rights that we have a freedom of speech, and that freedom of speech does cover peaceful protest. I mean, that doesn't mean that you can go and start burning cars and knocking cars over and looting and rioting, which is what happened in 1992. But to be able to peacefully protest is, I mean, that's something that I think most Americans would agree is really important in our democracy.
So we'll be following this topic for our future episodes. So hopefully there isn't much more development, so we don't have to really cover. But if it does, then we will be looking into it more closely.
Certainly, if the Insurrection Act ends up being invoked, I mean, that hasn't happened since 1992, like we mentioned, and that was with George H.W. Bush's. He had spoken to. Actually, I think he spoke to a lot of different people before they decided to invoke the act, and it was because the mayor at the time in LA wanted the help. Prior to that, the Insurrection Act hadn't been invoked since like the 60s during the Civil Rights Movement. And in those cases, it was against the will
Mhm.
of the mayors and the governors, but it was for things like there were black students, desegregation had happened, and black students were going to what were previously all white schools. And the governor, even though I'm getting really into the weeds here, so the Supreme Court ruled that segregation was fundamentally unequal. We couldn't have segregated schools. We needed to desegregate the schools. And then there were mayors and there were governors in certain parts of the country
Right.
that were saying, no, I'm going to refuse to let that happen. I'm not going to let these black students enter the building. And that's when these presidents like Lyndon Johnson, Kennedy, there was one other president I know during the civil rights movement, they stepped in because they were like, well, you're not following now the law of the land. The Supreme Court has said that you need to do X. You're refusing to do it. So I am going to invoke the Insurrection Act to get you to follow the law, basically.
So I think maybe this topic by itself, maybe it may not be extremely important for now. But when we have other things happening like this, journalists with the Pentagon Press Restriction Act that just went live, I believe, this week, and so many of the journalists they actually returned their badges. And this is, although it looks like it's an innocent kind of restriction, just saying that you can do certain type of news to, um, uh, if it's not approved by the Pentagon, then they cannot make certain news, and that's the idea or the culture of this, banning things and restricting and controlling is. Then you add so many different things, and then it can go to a different level at some point. So this is not just one isolated issue. So there's another issue that directly involves press, and like those people, like, it's almost 50 or 60 of them, they returned their badges, and there's only 15 people left.
Right, and freedom of the press is a cornerstone of American democracy. You need to have many different voices that are being heard, so it's not just funneled down into one sort of biased voice.
Right, right. So let's go to a little bit more fun
Yeah,
topic.
that was some pretty deep stuff.
Right. So Bridget Macron. So first of all, I was really happy to see that you actually wrote a blog about this. Like, because when I brought this up first, I was a little bit worried about you judging me, and I think probably you did judge me a little bit. Like, why does he want to talk about this? So then, because I see something that's really big in this, like the action that they took. It's it's crazy. So just for those who may not actually watch the prior episodes, this is July 23rd, 2025. The French President Emmanuel Macron and the First Lady Bridget Macron filed a 219-page defamation lawsuit in Delaware Supreme Court. So this is against American commentator Candace Owens. She's actually, I have to say, she's fun to watch. You don't have to agree with her, but she has a good style. Even if she sometimes talks just, stupid stuff, when you are watching her, you kind of want to believe her. So she has a really good way to uh, get her audience kind of focus on certain things. And this is, I think, this kind of got out of control, but it got more out of control with this lawsuit. So now, if we can maybe start with why this was filed in Delaware versus it could have been done in France, and then what also makes Delaware courts significant in this type of international defamation case. If we can kind of go through those, and then I have some follow-up questions after that.
Okay, well, I would assume that the reason it was filed in Delaware is because that's where Miss Owens' businesses are incorporated. My understanding, not being super familiar with French law, is that France has a statute of limitations on these defamation lawsuits of 3 months. That was one of the things that I believe Miss Owens has suggested as a reason why they wouldn't have filed it in France, although I would argue that Miss Owens is still making these comments, so I don't know. That would probably toll the statute of limitations. The statute of limitations being like the amount of time that you have in which to file a lawsuit. And the decision to file in Delaware over Tennessee, which is where I believe that she is located, again, it comes from the fact that her businesses are incorporated in Delaware, which is very, very common. There are a lot of businesses incorporated here because Delaware has very favorable tax law. Ms. Owens did suggest on a podcast with Tucker Carlson that she did it here, or that the Macrons filed their lawsuit here because the Bidens sort of own the Delaware courts and the Delaware courts are corrupt. I have to admit, I took a little umbrage with that because I think that Delaware attorneys, we sort of pride ourselves on working with a lot of decorum and a lot of integrity. I certainly don't think that the courts here are corrupt. I think it was more just the simple matter of this is where she has incorporated her businesses.
Right. So, well, also like when we covered this last year, I believe I did a lot of when some part of this year, so much research in this to make sure that our legal system in Delaware is protected because it's extremely unique in a way that most other states they are actually using the decisions that we make in Delaware, and I think there's some part of jealousy I can see there. So Texas wants to get some business from Delaware, and also these when you tell someone like Elon Musk that he cannot get 50 billion, I think it was the salary. Was it for 50 million? I
It
get
was
my
some colossal amount of
right.
money.
So then the judge says no, and then Elon Musk can use his full power in media and everywhere else to just uh, kind of like dirty talk Delaware and its system, but that's far from the truth. So this is the system that actually is one of the most difficult ones to pass the bar, if I'm not mistaken. So I think there's some jealousy, and then the other states also wants to get our business. But it's interesting that this is happening here, and I really want this to go through the full jury, and then if you can take me in with you to the court, we are gonna. I think we're gonna have a lot of fun with this.
Well, I mean, if it does go before a jury trials are typically open to the public, so you should be able to go. I will say, if it gets a lot of attention, you might have a hard time finding a seat. Get there early and make sure that you're able to get in the door.
So we'll wake up really early.
We will.
Now, this defamation claims by public figures are extremely difficult to win, which we kind of talked about this before. So, if you can explain us how does U.S. law make it much harder for public figures like presidents and Mrs. Macron to win this case? What are the obstacles that they are going to have with this?
Well, we've already spoken a little bit about the First Amendment when it comes to freedom of the press and freedom to protest. I mean, again, the First Amendment is like one of the cornerstones of American democracy. And the idea is that people should be allowed to express themselves without fear of retribution, generally speaking, from the government. You typically need to have a government actor before you can have a First Amendment claim. All this is to say that, generally speaking, a person like Candace Owens has the right to go on a podcast and to express her thoughts and express her opinions. Um, Now, that doesn't give her the right to defame somebody. When you defame somebody, first of all, what you're saying needs to be untrue. Truth is a complete defense to defamation. So she needs to be saying something that's untrue, and she needs to cause some harm to the person that she's talking about, in this case, the Macrons. But the courts, well, there was a case in the 60s that went all the way to the Supreme Court where there was, I believe it was the New York Times, had published a piece on somebody, and that person sued for defamation and was like, "Oh, like this is, you've defamed my character. I've suffered from this. I, I have damages because of this." And the Supreme Court was like, "Well, this person, you are a public figure. If you've held yourself out as a public figure, and by that I mean you're somebody who has some notoriety, some fame." Celebrities are public figures, politicians are public figures. First of all, typically you've benefited from that in some way. And secondly, the public has more of a right to know about what's going on in your personal life than they do just the average Joe on the street, because it's uh, it's a matter of interest to the public. And newspapers and other media outlets should be free to report on things without always being afraid that they're going to be hit with a lawsuit. The idea is, if that's the case, it's going to chill speech. You're going to have journalists, you're going to have, talking heads who are going to be really afraid to speak honestly on the news if they're always worried that they're going to get hit with some sort of a defamation lawsuit if, say, they report something and it turns out, oh, they made a mistake, they didn't check their sources correctly, they said something that wasn't true. But the Supreme Court was like, well, look, we need to have an added protection there. It's not just enough that you said something that was untrue. It's not just enough that what you said damaged somebody in some way, harmed their reputation, or caused them economic harm. You have to have done it with actual malice. And actual malice means that you either knew it was untrue and you said it anyway, or that you said it with a reckless disregard for the truth. And that's a high bar to clear. It has to be that you did not do any of your due diligence whatsoever when you reported on this. And it's pretty hard to show actual malice for a reason, because we don't want to chill the speech of journalists and media personalities who are reporting on what are considered to be pretty important topics if they're about these public figures. The average American has the right to know what's going on with these public figures. Sort of the
Right.
typical idea.
Now, the other thing I guess is, like, calling someone a transgender, is that an insult?
I would argue, I mean, look, different people are going to have a different opinion on this, but I would argue, legally speaking, that no, that alone probably would not rise to the level of being that damaging to one's reputation today in 2025, because there's been a shift in public perception of the trans community, and it's not considered an insult in the way that somebody might have considered it an insult even 10, 20 years ago. I think that you're going to have to do something that's a little bit more than just claiming that somebody is transgender. Even if Brigitte Macron can say, "No, I'm not trans. I can prove it." I still don't know that that's going to be something that she can argue like damaged her in some way.
So, and then damage is, I don't see any like financial damage, but maybe there's some psychological damage. But they look pretty happy out there. So, like,
Uh,
she slapped the husband when she was getting out of the plane. Doesn't seem like she's having a lot of issues with this. But is there any real harm that you can see so far from what they have sent?
in their complaint, they allege economic damages. They uh, did not get more specific than that. You don't really need to. In Delaware is a notice jurisdiction, which means you just need to give the party that you're suing notice of what the lawsuit is about. You don't need to get into sort of the meat and potatoes of it. So they have claimed that she caused them some economic harm. They're going to have to prove that throughout the course of discovery in order to recover on that. Now, it is possible, say it goes in front of a jury could find that Candace Owens is liable for defamation, but that the Macrons did not suffer any harm whatsoever, in which case the jury could award what are called nominal damages, which is typically $1, and it's just sort of symbolic.
Hmm.
But I think that the Macrons could also argue general damages here, meaning that there was harm to their reputation, that they suffered emotional harm. I mean, if what they are alleging in they've actually filed an amended complaint, and if what they are alleging that Candace Owens said about them is true, then Miss Owens definitely said a lot of things that I think the average reasonable person would find to be defamatory.
Well, if since she didn't actually address this problem in public, um, this is Bridget Macron. I'm thinking if this was to happen to me, someone comes in and tells me that, well, he's a transgender. By the way, like, one of my closest friends, and I'm a big supporter, Sarah McBride is a transgender, right? So obviously we have zero problem with this. But if they were to do that, I probably wouldn't sue them. That would be the last thing that I would do, because that will bring kind of that would make that claim almost like so important, so that now everyone is going to openly talk about it. What I would have done it, they have the power to do it, so just go to one of the talk shows and make fun of it. But
Sure. I mean, I think it's a bit of a they're in a bit of a between a rock and a hard place here, because you're right. There's this notion called the Barbara Streisand effect, when like you you actually call more attention to something just
right,
by acknowledging it.
right,
But it did seem like this podcast that Miss Owens was putting on was getting a lot of views, and it was sort of picking up steam, and other people were talking about it. The Macron sent cease and desist letters that were ignored, and I think it just reached a point where they felt like enough is enough. And like I saw a clip of Joe Rogan talking about it, and he's like, "Well, if it wasn't true, they would sue her for defamation. Why haven't they sued her for defamation yet?" So I think that was sort of the mindset that they got into. It's like, well, if we don't nip this in the bud, it's just going to get more and more out of control. We have to do something. But to your point, yes, by filing a lawsuit, like I had never heard of any of this before they filed the
right.
lawsuit.
And I wouldn't actually bring it up to our show if there wasn't a lawsuit. So, and also, of course, it's happening in Delaware. But what you just said is really true. So if sometimes, like, deliberately people are kind of going after, or like, I'll give you an example. So I see it on social media. So there's because I have to follow both Turkey and U.S. News very closely. So there are a couple people that they think that they are on, let's say, on the conservative side, on the Republican side in Turkey. So I see their posts. They're actually criticizing some, let's say, some singers who are doing some strip shows. But she's posting that on her page. This person, conservative person, posting it on her profile, criticizing her. The only way that I know of that video is because if I'm following this lady, you see what I mean? Like, they are actually, like, they are making them more famous in a way. So that I think the Barbara Streisand example is a good one, because that's how it is. So if she was to just actually address this early on, now with Candace, and you'll probably tell me this in a couple months from now, that you'll say that I was right. She's addictive. So I watch almost every show now. She's like, I don't agree with her, just so that you know, I don't really. But then it's so much fun to watch her.
She does seem to be very charismatic.
So she has that. So that's why people are watching, not because they care about Bridget Macron. Most Americans don't know who Macron. I mean, you know this.
Yeah,
So
I would absolutely
now
agree.
they are gonna be very well famous here, so they can maybe
Yeah,
do a talk show and then make money here.
maybe.
So, all right, now our next main topic for today is the AI and its legal implications, and I want this to be kind of maybe starting point for us, and we can actually build on this in time. And I actually personally I use AI in different capacities, and I think it can enhance the person from the business side in some ways. It actually does. You know, you can have a AI application for song making. Like you can actually write songs, or you can post. You can have your like our show has its own music now, so we don't pay copyrights to anyone.
Mhm.
So we used to pay YouTube some money, and now we are using our own. And Ethan and I, we just one day we said, okay, we don't want to do the extra work because every time it's a license work. After these live ones, we have to go back and then just add the license and then customize it and all that stuff. So now we don't have to worry about it. So there's that. There's like you can write like books, and you can be like Deep L is one of the best translators out there. It's almost like human-like translation. It's not like word to word, and then which kind of loses its meaning. So the AI actually is going to a different direction, uh, and a lot of professions are going to be impacted by this. And but I think I want to kind of keep our focus on the licensing side and the copyright side. Like I know, like I made some songs on AI other than our YouTube channel, so it's a secret. So not under my name. So the thing is, uh, I don't know if I have the proper license, but the application tells me I have. So it's definitely taken from somewhere. And what if it's actually stolen? There's no way of me knowing that and other people knowing that. So if you can kind of tell us who owns the copyright for AI generated content under the current US law, and then I have some follow up questions.
Well, as it stands right now, you cannot get a copyright on something that's AI generated. The copyright law on its face and how courts have interpreted it so far is that the Copyright Act means works that have been created by humans. It gets a little bit more complicated when you're talking about something where you used AI as a tool. But say I come up with a very descriptive prompt where I'm like, I want you to create a song with this kind of melody, and I want the lyrics to invoke this, and I want it to be this length. Then AI creates that song. As of right now, you're not going to be able to get a copyright
I
on
did.
that. I did you get a
I have it on my desk. I
you
also
have the
give.
copyright
I
for
have
it?
the
You like
copyright.
filled it out on
Yep, I
Okay.
did.
I would like to take a look at that because I'm not
Maybe
sure that that is
Faith, it's
accurate.
at my desk. If you can just bring it, it's right under the monitor. You'll see there's a copyright in my office underneath the monitor. So now this one actually is that's why I actually from the business side it's one thing because we use ChatGPT and then we have our own stuff like our own opinion there. We are not building something brand new. It's just kind of like the that turbo or enhance or supercharge the person. But that's why actually I wanted to also better understand this whole issue because I did get a copyright. So the song was made by AI. I did just what you were explaining, give the instructions, the lyrics, and then AI made the song. I went to the US copyright site, have an account. It took about 2.5 months to get it.
I'm just curious if that would stand up. If like somebody tried to
That's what
sue
I'm
you for that,
exactly.
if
So,
somebody used that and sued you, I'm not and look, I don't practice
but
copyright
you see,
law.
that's what I like. Let's. I mean, that's you're at the right place. So I like my position is not like, hey, this is the greatest thing. My position is there must be some legal oversight on this. That or it's going to become a bigger problem as people are discovering these and using them more often?
For sure. I mean, I think we're just sort of at the birth of AI right now, and it's going to
Right.
become bigger and bigger, and courts are going to have to grapple with this more and more. And again, I don't practice copyright law, but my understanding is right now, if you look at it just on its face, the Copyright Act, there needs to be at least some minimal creative human input in order to have something that can be copywritten.
Hmm.
And if you use AI to sort of bulk up something, like if you have a picture that you've started and that you use AI to, uh, I don't know, add some flair to, your original picture can be copywritten, but I don't think that you can copyright the actual photo that had the AI on top. So
And we didn't talk about
we
this
didn't
before.
talk about
And
this.
I
So
didn't. I swear to you, I did not actually think about this one on when I was trying to explain. Some of these things just happen. So this is my copyright of the song that's made by AI, and it's the legal, like not like the distribution or anything. It's just from the copyright office.
And when you were filling this out, I know that there's a section on the website where you have to indicate that there were portions that were created with AI. Did you indicate that?
I need to check that, but I don't remember.
I would, I think, were I you at this moment in time, be a little bit concerned that if somebody tried to, like if
So
somebody
we can
used
say,
this
yeah,
and you tried to sue them, that the court might find that you don't actually have the copyright to it because it sounds like it was completely AI generated
right, with our directions.
with your
Hmm.
directions. Yes, and I think as it stands right now, that would not be enough human input in order for it to be considered copyrightable.
So we'll have a follow
We'll,
up
we'll
on
put a
this
pin
one.
in
Right.
this.
Um,
Maybe I'll steal this
yep.
song and you can sue me and we see what happens.
We can actually have a copy of that for you, and then I think it would be good for us to kind of know this is why I actually brought this up for us, not the song issue, like just overall. Now there's a lot of stuff, so I can actually tell from the other day one of my clients sent me this long email, and I'm like, you didn't write this one. This like ChatGPT wrote this. I use it too, but then I actually customize it a little bit, to make sure that it actually tells what I need to say in some ways. But this guy just copy paste everything from there. But as people are using this, there will be issues with it. So they are going to create
Certainly.
things.
And I've seen that in my profession as well. And I don't I've used very very little AI in my profession as of right now because I'm so leery of doing something that is considered unethical that I just have not I basically haven't used it at all. But I
Mhm.
think it can be used as a tool. Just I wouldn't use it as a crutch. And there have been cases that have happened where attorneys will write entire briefs and motions and things solely using AI, and the technology isn't there yet that it's going to work properly. And what ends up happening is this document will get spit out that looks pretty good and
Mhm.
reads pretty good, but all the case law is made up. And then when you go to check the cases, none of them
They're not
actually
there.
exist. It's all a lie.
Right.
And then you have real egg on your face when you're in front of a judge and they're asking you, well,
Hmm.
this case that you cited to, show it to me. It doesn't exist. You've made all this up.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. So I think in this whole issue, while it's happening, do you foresee AI being recognized as a legal entity? So someone is going to be responsible for the accountability in the future?
I mean, I don't know if you could just say, like, uh, I guess let's unpack that a little bit. What do you mean somebody is responsible for it? Like,
So let's say in this case, in my
mhm,
own case, so
okay.
this is made and the application told me that this is all fine. Like I followed, I paid my license fee and we got the copyright. So then let's say if I was actually using this for commercial reasons and then someone is suing me and then I say, well, I used AI to make sure that this was not owned by someone. And if I actually am going to be under fire for this, then I'm going to go to the AI to say, hey, you misled me,
Mhm.
and then I pay the proper fees and all that. So in that case, would AI be the recognized legal entity to go after?
In that scenario, I don't know that anyone could sue you. I would think it's would be more there. You might come across an issue where somebody takes your copywritten song, uses it, and you try to sue them, and then the court's like, well, the copyright is invalid because it was AI generated. Um, I do think that this is something, like I said, the courts are going to have to grapple with more and more. I don't know that. I mean, it's sort of like this vague, nebulous notion that am I going to sue, like, if I'm going to sue AI, what does that mean? I know there have been some cases, like maybe if the person who helped create the algorithm, or I mean, look, when you're using AI, and I'm not a tech person by any stretch of the imagination, I think that you just sort of like the AI just kind of goes out there and really quickly is able to sort of scrape all of these websites and pull out this information and analyze it in just a matter of seconds or minutes. And somebody had to like build that, somebody had to create that. It didn't just come out of thin air. So the creator of the AI, the person who drafted the algorithms, could they potentially have some liability? I just think that'd be so messy because there's it's just like there's not like one person that I can point to and be like, you made this AI, you're responsible if it messes
So,
up.
Carl, I just want to add something to what you are saying. There's a problem there with AI. It's not like something that Ethan and Faith are just making it and then just leaving it there, and then it's only using what they have given by them. It's also able to self-learn, self-develop, self-do a lot of things.
Right, which is why I don't think that you would ever be able to just put one person
Right.
on the
So then
hook.
AI almost is becoming an entity in that case. And I know this is maybe too early to kind of worry about this, but I think it's going to happen where AI is going to be almost fully independent. No one is going to be responsible. So it's running it on its own and not getting anything from anyone. So in those cases, uh, if maybe this will be your next blog, so then blog topic. So I want to spend more time in the future with this.
Right. I mean, I'm just thinking about the example I gave with lawyers who have attempted to use AI. I mean, they are not able to, they're not going to sue ChatGPT and say, hey, you gave me bad case law. They don't really have any recourse. They're to blame. You know, you're at fault. You tried to cheat and you got caught.
Right. On that one, it's more there's no content there, but in there's some where the copyright is like in these cases with the songs and others, or misrepresenting certain things. So if the source is AI and if this becomes an independent AI at that point, so the legality of that is, I believe, right now, I don't think we have anything that's addressing that. And but I know that this is going to be in the next 12 to 18 months. It will be a problem. Like the ChatGPT, when I started using versus now, it's not the same thing. So, and in 12 to 18 months, things are going to be much different than what it is. And I think we should prep for what's coming. That's
Right. I don't know. I just still am trying to wrap my head around this. It seems like almost like you'd be trying to sue a computer. Like I just don't know that you could put a human face
and I
on
don't even know
it.
if we can shut it down, so it can run.
I know.
Like
This is
it's
turning
scary,
into the Terminator.
right?
Skynet is becoming self-aware.
So speaking of Terminator, so I just want to very quickly mention our next topic, Alex Jones, the Supreme Court decision with 1.4 billion Sandy Hook defamation. This is a person, Alex Jones, is the far right radio host and a prominent conspiracy theorist. So now I don't have fun watching him. I do have fun when I'm watching Candace Owens. So he's not my cup of tea. So a lot of things, and he's actually one of the people who called Mike, said Michael Michelle Obama transgender. So a lot of other things he has. This Supreme Court refusal to hear the case signifies legally, like what does this signifies legally and symbolically with the Alex Jones case with $1.4 billion
Okay, well,
lawsuit?
I know we don't have a lot of time, and this is kind of a lot to sort of sum up, but let me see the gist of it. Alex Jones, I think people are aware now, he said some things about Sandy Hook being a hoax and how the people involved were crisis actors. So some of the parents ended up suing him for a variety of things, defamation, emotional distress, because they were actually being doxxed and needing to move, and like their cars were being vandalized, and they were getting death threats because people really believed that they had made the whole thing up. So they sued Alex
Hmm.
Jones, and he attempted to draft. There were several lawsuits, but he attempted to write some motions to dismiss to just get the case
Hmm.
thrown out in its entirety. That's very common. The cases were not dismissed. They were allowed to move forward. Litigation began, and then he just sort of fell off the radar. He was refusing to respond to discovery requests. This went on for, I think, years. And while all this was happening, he was still going on InfoWars,
Hmm.
his podcast or whatever it is, and saying things about Sandy Hook and even talking about the judge on the case. Like I saw he was kept referring to her as a goblin and calling her Judge Goblin. And finally, the judge on the case got fed up and she was like, you know what? We're done. You're not actually doing any of the things you're supposed to be doing. And so she decided that she ruled in favor of the plaintiffs. Essentially, he got a default judgment. He lost his case without needing to, he wasn't able to put on any case whatsoever. The
Hmm.
judge was like, we're done. You're getting a default judgment because you're not doing what you're supposed to do. This has gone on for years. We're finished here. So there ended up being a trial, but the trial was not to decide whether or not he was liable. It was solely based on damages. So there was a jury, and in front of the jury, you had witnesses and parents and Alex Jones testifying, but it wasn't to find out whether or not what he did, whether he should be held liable. It
Hmm.
was solely to find out how much money he needed to pay these people because the court had already decided that he was
Right.
liable. And that's pretty unusual. Usually people are allowed to get their day in court. To have a default granted like that is not typical. And then there was this huge, they came back with all of these punitive damages and just regular damages. And now he owes like $1 billion. So he decided to try to get that. He wants to try to get reversed. The
Right.
Supreme Court said that they're not even going to hear the case, which means that he is sort of out of options.
Right.
And I mean,
There are a lot of crazy people out there, and
yeah, yeah.
he's one of them.
So many people try to go in front of the Supreme Court. You don't have an automatic right to do so. You have to file what's called a writ of certiorari, and the court selects whether or not they want to hear your case. Why they decided not to hear his, I don't know. They don't. The Supreme Court doesn't give a reason or a rationale for that. But I mean, it also seems kind of straightforward and cut and dry. Like this is what the jury came back with,
Hmm.
and now he has to pay, although he's claiming he's bankrupt, so who knows how
True.
much they'll actually
Very
get.
true. So, I mean, maybe we'll cover more next time when you are here with us. So I know we are at time, and Bariatric Friday will start in the next couple of minutes. Thank you for being with us. So honestly, like every time we do sessions, there are some things that when I'm participating, I know that I can learn, and I learn more, and this is one of those. So, and also it kind of helped me to focus on certain things and making sure that we prep these in a much better way. And I enjoyed this a lot, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be back next week with another episode. And until then, please stay united. Bye bye.